In terms of the investigation, as far as what's next, it is still an open investigation. They're reviewing cell phone records. They also are going to review the results of the necropsy of the dog.
Our first guest is the biggest movie star in the world and a really, really nice guy. His new movie, The Last Samurai, is in theaters now. Please welcome the one and only Tom.
Gene Hackman is a name synonymous with Hollywood greatness, 2 Oscars, a career spanning decades, and a legacy that seemed untouchable. But behind the accolades, behind the reserved demeanor, and his retreat into a quiet life in Santa Fe, lay secrets that even the most seasoned Hollywood insiders could hardly fathom. Secrets that, if exposed, could shatter the carefully constructed facades of some of the industry's most iconic figures. Let's just say Hackman wasn't the kind of man to poke his nose where it didn't belong until he saw too much.
Breaking news, actor Gene Hackman's cause of death revealed. It is tragic, sad. Officials tonight say the actor's wife died a week before Hackman.
So when it comes to Gene Hackman's career, the man was a powerhouse of talent. His performances in films like Unforgiven and The French Connection were nothing short of electrifying. But what the public didn't see was the friction, the unspoken tension behind the scenes, especially with Clint Eastwood during the filming of Unforgiven. The film won critical acclaim, but Hackman reportedly described the set as a battlefield. The 2 men were giants of the industry, but their philosophies couldn't have been more different. Clint Eastwood, both director and star, was known for his cold, methodical approach to filmmaking. Hackman, however, found this style suffocating, even dehumanizing. He once allegedly confided in a close friend, calling Eastwood a cowboy who presses buttons, not a real director. It wasn't just a clash of artistic visions. It was something deeper. Hackman was said to resent Eastwood's domineering presence on set. As the director, Eastwood held all the cards. For Hackman, who played the volatile little Bill Daggett, it became increasingly clear that his input as an actor was irrelevant to Eastwood's agenda. He treated emotions like props, just another thing to be adjusted to fit his frame. Hackman had reportedly told another confidant. The tension was palpable, and it didn't end when the camera stopped rolling. Hackman's frustration grew into something more, a suspicion that Eastwood's influence in Hollywood extended far beyond the set. Years after Unforgiven swept the Oscars, whispers began to surface about a mysterious document Hackman had allegedly kept, a so-called blacklist. This wasn't just some idle collection of gossip. According to those who'd heard about it, the list contained the names of rising directors whose promising careers had mysteriously fizzled out. Hackman hinted to close friends that there had been an invisible hand guiding their downfall. And at the center of it, he suggested, was Clint Eastwood. The idea was chilling, a Hollywood legend wielding his power to keep the wrong people out of the game. Hackman never directly accused Eastwood, but in private notes discovered after his passing, there were cryptic mentions of deliberate obstructions of careers snuffed out before they could even begin.
I don't give it, really, brother. I don't care about money and power. I care about when I watch Al Pacino work and Chris Walken and De Niro's early work and Richard Harris's work and Ray Winstone's work. That's the kind of actor I want to be, like Monty Clift and, Brando back in the day.
But Clint Eastwood wasn't the only name that seemed to haunt Hackman. If there was one figure he seemed to loathe even more, it was Tom Cruise. The 2 never appeared on screen together, but their paths crossed enough times to ignite a deep-seated animosity, at least on Hackman's side. Cruise, with his megawatt smile and larger-than-life persona, represented everything Hackman distrusted about Hollywood. But there was something else, something more sinister. Hackman was deeply wary of Cruise's ties to Scientology, a connection that Hackman reportedly believed was more than just a personal choice. To Hackman, Scientology wasn't just a controversial faith, it was a shadowy network pulling strings in Hollywood, controlling careers, and silencing dissenters.
You don't think Tom Cruise is a good actor?
I think he's irrelevant in my world.
In the 1990s, Hackman turned down not 1, but 2 high-profile projects simply because Cruise was attached to them. To those close to him, his reasoning was uncompromising. "I won't be another cog in that machine," he reportedly said. He referred to Cruise as Hollywood's most dangerous missionary, a chilling label that reflected Hackman's belief that Cruise wasn't just a star. He was a gatekeeper for something much larger. Hackman's paranoia wasn't entirely unfounded. On more than one occasion, he allegedly received odd, cryptic phone calls after publicly criticizing Cruise's affiliations. The calls weren't overtly threatening, but they were unsettling enough to make Hackman take notice. A phrase repeated in one such call, "Hollywood has ears everywhere," stuck with him, according to notes found later.
The first person that Tom Cruise asked or complained that his sister couldn't find him a girlfriend, which ultimately ended up in the the search for a girlfriend for Tom Cruise that began with Nazanin Boniadi and then ultimately ended up with Katie Holmes, which was documented in a marvelous piece for Vanity Fair by Maureen Orth.
But the most damning evidence of Hackman's discomfort with Cruise came from a conversation he allegedly had with a former journalist turned Hollywood whistleblower. This individual, who had worked closely with the so-called fixer. A shadowy figure or group tasked with cleaning up Hollywood's messiest scandals, shared horrifying accounts of how Cruise's connections helped him weather storms that would have destroyed others. Hackman was said to have recorded parts of this conversation, creating what could have been a bombshell expose. Unfortunately, the tape has never surfaced, leading to speculation that it was either stolen or destroyed.
Think it just for sensationalistic purposes. I like John Travolta. I feel sorry that he is sort of enmeshed in this web that he doesn't seem to be able to find his way out of. But he is a nice man. Not the same with Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is a phony nice man.
And then there was Warren Beatty, another Hollywood titan whose name appeared in Hackman's orbit of unease. Unlike Eastwood or Cruise, Hackman and Beatty had once been friends, even confidants. But that changed one night in 1984 when Hackman reportedly overheard a conversation he wasn't supposed to hear. The setting was a glamorous award ceremony after party, one of those glittering, exclusive events where Hollywood's elite let their guard down. Hackman found himself in earshot of Beatty and two other men in sharp suits. The conversation turned to a recent scandal involving a well-known actor and an inappropriate audition. Hackman didn't catch all the details, but what he did hear chilled him to the bone. Beatty, ever the charmer, allegedly brushed off the incident with a casual, handle it quietly. From that moment on, Hackman's view of Beatty was irrevocably altered. What had once been a friendship became a simmering resentment. Hackman reportedly began to see Beatty not as a colleague, but as a puppet master, someone who thrived in the shadows, brokering deals to protect the powerful while profiting from their secrets. According to one journalist who interviewed Hackman in his later years, he kept a Beatty list, a collection of names tied to the actor's alleged settlement deals. The list was said to include not just actors, but directors and even political figures who had relied on Beatty's network to make their problems disappear. And then there was Marlon Brando, the acting legend whose name alone conjures visions of Hollywood's golden age. Hackman admired Brando's talent but despised his silence. Brando, Hackman believed, had seen more of Hollywood's dark side than anyone. Yet he chose to let it fester, to stand idly by while others paid the price. Hackman reportedly spoke of a lost memoir Brando had once planned to write, a tell-all that would have exposed Hollywood's dirtiest secrets. According to Hackman, the manuscript was stolen in a mysterious break-in, and Brando, fearing for his safety, never revisited the project. By the time Hackman retreated to Santa Fe, his distrust of Hollywood had turned into something more, a quiet determination to set the record straight. He began collecting notes, writing down names, dates, and events that he believed the world needed to know. But with every revelation came risk. Friends noticed that Hackman became increasingly reclusive, even paranoid in his later years. He reportedly told one confidant, "If I disappear, don't believe it was an accident." Hackman's final days were marked by an eerie sense of foreboding. He had spent decades observing Hollywood sparkle and rot, and he was ready to speak out. But then, just as he seemed poised to reveal everything, he was gone. The circumstances surrounding his passing, his notes, recordings, and the cryptic list of names remain a puzzle. It's as if the truth he carried was too dangerous to be known. And that's where it all takes a darker turn. The sudden loss of Gene Hackman left behind not just questions, but an unsettling silence, one that feels more deliberate with each passing day. What happened to the tapes? Who has the list? And most importantly, why does the truth feel so out of reach? But what really happened in Gene Hackman's final moments? That's the question everyone's asking, but the answers seem to be buried under layers of intrigue, missing evidence, and a silence that feels all too intentional. The sudden and mysterious passing of Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, has left a tangled mess of unanswered questions. And let's be real, the circumstances couldn't be more bizarre. From scattered pills to missing tapes and cryptic clues, it's almost as if something or someone didn't want the truth to come out. Let's dive into the investigation because trust us, the deeper you look, the stranger it gets. First, there's the timeline, or rather, the lack of one. Hackman's pacemaker, which had been recording his heart activity, logged its final event on February 17, but his body, along with Betsy's, wasn't discovered until February 26, 9 whole days later. 9 days. That's a long time for two people to go unnoticed, especially in a gated community like theirs. You'd think someone would have checked in sooner, but no. By the time authorities arrived, the scene they found raised more questions than answers. Hackman was discovered in a mudroom near his cane, fully dressed, as though he'd been heading somewhere in a hurry or trying to escape something. Meanwhile, Betsy was found in the bathroom, near a space here, with pills scattered across the countertop. And let's not forget their German Shepherd, found lifeless just a few feet away. 2 other dogs were still alive, wandering the property. Suspicious. That's putting it mildly.
Since that time, Xena, the deceased dog, has been taken for necropsy at the Veterinary Diagnostic Services, and we'll be awaiting those results.
Here's where things get even murkier. The initial reports ruled out carbon monoxide poisoning, which is one of the first things investigators looked for, given the enclosed space and the presence of a space heater. Tests conducted by the local fire department and gas company came back negative. No leaks, no traces of the odorless gas. So if it wasn't that, then what was it? An accident? A medical emergency? Maybe. But the lack of external trauma on either Hackman or Betsy's body complicates things. Sure, Hackman was 95, but Betsy was 65, still relatively young and reportedly in good health. Could both of them have suddenly collapsed due to unrelated medical events? The odds of that happening seem astronomical.
Let's speak a little bit in reference to the timeline for Betsy Arakawa. We know from our investigation that on February 9th, 2025, she picked up Xena from Gruta Veterinary Hospital. There was a procedure that was done with the dog, which may explain why the dog was in a crate at the residence.
Then there's the matter of the pills. On the bathroom counter, near Betsy, investigators found an open prescription bottle along with several spilled pills. The medication included treatments for blood pressure and thyroid issues, as well as an everyday pain reliever. But here's the thing. There's no evidence, at least not yet, to suggest she overdosed or misused them. And even if she had, would that explain Hackman's sudden collapse in another part of the house? It feels unlikely. The pills might be a red herring, or they might hold the key to understanding what actually happened that day. But until the toxicology reports come back, we're all left guessing.
We do have new details now on the stunning and very sad death of actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy. The Santa Fe medical examiner revealing autopsy results that they believe show that Hackman died of heart disease with complications from Alzheimer's.
Now, let's talk about what was missing, because sometimes it's what isn't there that tells the real story. In Hackman's home, authorities found an open safe, and inside, nothing. No documents, no tapes, nothing of any apparent value. This is the same safe where Hackman reportedly stored the infamous recording he made of his conversation with a former insider tied to Hollywood's so-called fixer. This tape, according to those familiar with Hackman's later years, was explosive. It allegedly detailed how powerful figures, actors, directors, even studio executives used the fixer to cover up scandals that would destroy their reputations. The recording was said to contain names, dates, and details so damning that its existence alone was enough to make Hackman a target. And yet, it's gone. Coincidence. Hard to believe.
Just so shocking and heartbreaking, but investigators say it's unclear if Hackman knew that his wife of 30 years was for a week before he passed away.
And it's not just the tape that's missing. Hackman was known for keeping meticulous notes, a habit he developed during his years in Hollywood. These weren't just random scribbles. They were detailed accounts of conversations, observations, and incidents he'd witnessed over the decades. Friends described these notes as a map of Hollywood's underbelly, filled with connections and insights that only someone with Hackman's experience could compile. But when investigators searched his home, many of these notes were nowhere to be found. What happened to them? Were they stolen? Destroyed? Or did Hackman hide them somewhere else, knowing the danger they posed?
They say he was in an advanced stage of Alzheimer's, and it's possible he just didn't know. And some of what they said yesterday, just really as shocking as a revelation that Hackman and his wife to begin with. Some of the timeline, the fact that Betsy was seen on camera at a CVS pharmacy just shortly before she died. For some people, that raises more questions than answers.
Adding to the mystery is the break-in that occurred shortly after Hackman and his wife were discovered. Yes, you heard that right. Just hours after the authorities left the scene, someone broke into the property. But here's the kicker. Nothing else was taken. Family photos, furniture, even valuables like jewelry were left untouched. The only things missing were items related to Hackman's so-called Hollywood files. Whoever did this wasn't looking for money or possessions. They were looking for information, and they found it. But who would go to such lengths to erase Hackman's work? Scientology is one name that keeps coming up. Hackman had been vocal, albeit cautiously, about his distrust of the organization. He believed they wielded far more power in Hollywood than anyone wanted to admit, controlling not just careers, but entire narratives. His feud with Tom Cruise, one of Scientology's most high-profile members, only added fuel to the fire. Hackman had reportedly received anonymous calls warning him to be careful after he criticized Cruise's ties to the group. Were these warnings connected to his sudden exit? It's impossible to say for sure, but the timing certainly raises eyebrows.
His longtime love, Betsy Arakawa, hantavirus. It's a rare flu-like disease linked to rats. And officials say Hackman's advanced Alzheimer's was so severe that he lived in their New Mexico house, or survived, might be the better word, for a week with his wife's dead body before he also passed away.
Then there's the silence from those who might know more. In the days following Hackman's passing, several of his close friends and former colleagues were approached for comment. Most declined, citing privacy or a lack of information, but a few hinted at something deeper. One anonymous source, a former journalist who had worked with Hackman on uncovering Hollywood secrets, described feeling uneasy in the days leading up to the discovery. They claimed Hackman had been on edge, as though he knew something was coming. Another source, a neighbor who had known the couple for years, mentioned seeing unmarked cars parked near their home in the weeks prior. Were these just coincidences, or were they signs of something more sinister?
Was he aware that Miss Hackman had died? And I think that question's difficult to answer, but I can tell you that he was in an advanced state of Alzheimer's, and it's quite possible that he was not aware that she was deceased.
And let's not forget the role of Hollywood itself. The industry has a long history of covering up scandals to protect its biggest stars and most lucrative projects. Hackman knew this better than anyone. He'd seen careers destroyed with a single whisper, reputations saved with a well-placed bribe. He understood the machinery of Hollywood because he'd been a part of it for so long. But in his later years, he seemed determined to expose it, to shine a light on the dark corners everyone else ignored. Was that determination what ultimately led to his downfall? As the investigation drags on, the questions only multiply. Why were Hackman and Betsy so isolated in their final days? Why did no one check on them sooner? Who had access to their home, their safe, their files? And most importantly, what were they trying to hide or reveal? The official narrative offers few answers, and every new detail seems to complicate the picture further. It's as if the truth is just out of reach, obscured by layers of secrecy and misdirection.
And Aaron, Betsy was 30 years younger than Gene and appeared to be his caretaker. So when she died, it appears there's no one to care for him. The medical examiner says that he did not have any food in his stomach when he died.
The mystery surrounding Gene Hackman's final days and the secrets he kept leaves us with more questions than answers. What do you think really happened to Gene Hackman and his wife? Could the missing tapes and notes hold the key to unraveling this enigma? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going and see if we can piece together this Hollywood puzzle. Until next time, stay curious and keep the speculations coming.